It's Wellness Wednesdays. It's Wellness Wednesday. Oh God, that was hello, Sunny. Yeah, I'm not at my best. You notice I'm wearing the same shirt every video because I bank recorded all of these Sunday. I had to like spend hours psyching myself up and then do it all in one, or I was gonna check it out. And this video is gonna be talking a bit about why. Because what's been going on lately, if you know, you know, if you don't, not important to this, but it's resulted in, see, this is one of the things, multiple PTSD triggers of mine got triggered, you know, that Solomon triggered thing. I'm going to miss that guy. It comes from my own experience, right? And I want to talk about what that actually means. Because it's a term that, yeah, it's ruined. It's so ruined. Because what it means is that it is a nervous system response, not just a bad feeling, not just negative emotions. It is a fight or flight response at the nervous system level. And it happens sometimes. I'm really good at managing it, but unfortunately, someone knew me well enough to hit those buttons, and I'm not even sure if they were doing it intentionally or just reactively, but 3 or 4 of them in the span of a couple of days. And in case you don't know what that means for someone with PTSD, that's bad. That is, you don't sleep. You're constantly what we call hyper aroused or hyper vigilant. I prefer hyper vigilant just because it doesn't sound like a sex thing, but you are jumpy. Your system is flooded with adrenaline. You are in ongoing freeze, fight, fawn, or flight response. Your decision making is profoundly impaired. You may stress eat. You might feel too nauseous to eat. I've been on the more nausea side of it right now, which obviously if you can't eat because you feel sick, it makes it harder to be, you know, at your best and fully functional, and certainly, you know, maintaining a semblance of emotional equilibrium, which is, you know, why I released the announcement on last Friday. Because, and see, I'm avoidant. I can't even say what happened. But I put it up then because, you know, I knew some people were going to be dicks. Again, the vast majority of people have been lovely. People have been very, very supportive. But because the PTSD is active, every single one of those people who have been dicks, it's, you know, rip and tear until it is done reaction. And I know I can't do that. And so I had to kind of stay off social media, stay off, you know, be very careful about what I waded into on the Discord server. Both the moderators and the community there have been super supportive. It's really been a lesson in the purpose of failure. And you fail because it allows you to see who people really are. And some people have been exceedingly decent. Some people have just been petty. And And that's good to know, because the petty people gotta go. You know, once you see that, you can't unsee that. And, you know, one of the things you have to accept when you have, I call it an emotional injury like PTSD, you have to accept that there are just certain things you have to do. And one of the things you have to do as part of being responsible for your recovery is that anybody who is counterproductive to your recovery, whether they intend to be or not, can't be in my life. And that, God, every time I talk about that, I get the reminder. I spent a year in really, really intense trauma therapy, and that was one of the things that I fought the absolute hardest. And, you know, a cop in the Stalker case said to me, your friends are not helping you, because they were continuing to communicate with the stalker. Stalker-chan, hi. I bet she's loving last week. But you know, the cop was not nice about it. The cop yelled at me, basically treated me like I was wasting her time. But that was because of the particular, you know, York Region Police was not at the time really great on stalking cases. I had for people who don't know, I got caught in a loophole in the system because one of the places Stalker Chan followed me to menace me was in York Region, a suburb of Toronto. It's a different city, structurally, municipally, different mayor, everything. So one of them happened there. Another of them happened in downtown Toronto. And the police departments at the time didn't talk to each other, so there was no way to prove a pattern, because Toronto wouldn't acknowledge the incident in York Region, and York Region wouldn't acknowledge the incident in Toronto. And if you're going, oh my fucking God, right. Yeah, it's fucked up. And, you know, because I was stalked by a woman, I couldn't even get a protective order. I went in, I filed the paperwork. The judge basically didn't talk me out of it, but did talk me out of it. Basically told me that there was not a great likelihood of the order being put in, because there was no previous romantic relationship, and that it would probably just inflame her to go through with it. Now, the judge didn't tell me that she was going to be able to get a copy of the paperwork I filed to get that message, to get that meeting with the judge. And yeah, it did inflame her. She's still banging on about that, claiming it proves I'm harassing her, posting the thing online. So the judge was right. It did only serve to inflame her, but stalkers shouldn't be able to get that fucking paperwork. And this is the thing. It's that sense, core to trauma, is this idea of you have no integrity, in the sense of people can do whatever the fuck they want to you. You know, nobody will help. Nobody will stop it. And, you know, it took me a really long time to realize, no, there are things I can do to stop it. It just means getting branded a bitch a lot, because you got to get tough, and you got to say no, And you gotta weather people saying absolutely everything they can think of to try to get you to cave. And it's happened to me so often since, I was diagnosed in 2013, 2012, 2013, around there. I never remember the exact time. Because it was one of those things, they diagnosed me and didn't tell me for a while, and then I found out what the diagnosis was. So they probably diagnosed me in 2012, but I found out in 2013. But, I've learned that people are just trained to try to break you. They're taught it when they're kids because people tried to break them, or they learned it from an abusive partner, and they don't even see how the behavior, it is inherently abusive. Certain behaviors just are. And because I was so gaslit for so long, by, and PTSD like mine starts in childhood. And so, growing up with my father being the way he was, and other elements of my family being the way they were, and thinking both that this was normal but not normal at the same time. Like, you knew other people didn't have families like this, but you did. This was your normal. And when you're a kid, what you end up thinking, and I worked with a lot of clients that have expressed the same sentiment, that you must deserve it because you don't have the things other families have. You don't have the things other kids have. And parents are, you keep hearing, your parents love you. Your parents love you. They just want what's best for you. And some parents don't. Some parents don't know how to love in a healthy way. And, then you get the bullshit new age shit of you manifested, and so you chose your parents when you were just a spirit, pre-birth. That's just, you don't say that to a fucking abuse victim. No. You don't. But this is the shit that's out there. And so working through the self-blame took me a decade. And one of the things that was really hard is that I had this cycle in my life of friends really badly stabbing me in the back, like my best friend sleeping with my boyfriend on prom night. Bad. And I eventually realized it's because my boundaries weren't there. I didn't stop the bullshit when it was smaller. And so it got to the point that it was big. Because once you start letting people mistreat you by not walking away, because you're terrified of what's going to happen when you do, they're going to keep mistreating you. You're training them how to treat you. And that is tough. It is very, very tough. Because people will find every reason in the world that it's your fault. And blessed Stalker Chan, every bad thing that's ever happened to her, she blames me for. And I don't think that's because she's this, nefarious. No, she's a wild dog. Apologies to wild dogs. She is so unable to face her own fuck-ups that she just blames me for everything. That's why she accuses me of defrauding crowdfunds, because she was accused of that through one of those websites where you report frauds, which are themselves frauds. And she keeps to this day saying, I did it. I didn't even know these sites existed until somebody linked me to it, going, have you seen this? Which is exactly what I had to stop people doing. It's not good for me for people to be informing me of her whereabouts. And that was something I slipped on recently. You know, consequences. But I know I didn't do it. She's convinced people. I didn't file that report. I've never defrauded a crowdfund. I mean, you guys saw how I behaved here, right? But it's really hard to know that when you do what's right for you, people will convince third parties you're evil. And I've been hearing a lot of additional information for stuff like going back years where it's like, oh, that's why that person got funny? Because the feminist mob that hated me during Lady Bits was bombarding them with messages to denounce me? Like, oh, okay. That whole exchange now makes a lot more sense. And because I made a web series with goofy characters about women's issues in video games, that warranted a public mobbing? Thank God I didn't know about that at the time, though, you know, it, like I said, context. But, you know, it's the period between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur now, and so, like, that in itself is very, very stressful because we're all, you know, I'm recording this on October 6th. We're all bracing for tomorrow. This is going to air after it. That's part of the reason I'm kind of going, you know, let's not strain the system too bad this week, because it's going to be, everybody's bracing for it. And so that, on top of the other shit that's been going on, and, you know, it's real hard to do the right thing when you know it's going to be publicly embarrassing, and you know that somebody who blames you for absolutely everything wrong in her life, and, you know, actively ingratiates herself to people just because they had a falling out with you. That made it way harder. And I did it anyway. 'Cause again, you know, I'm not the kind of person that runs from hard truths. I'm not the kind of person who does the easy thing instead of the right thing. And I'm not a person who will ever knowingly hurt another person. I know that about myself. It's weird. It's like this, annoy the shit out of them. Yeah. But if I actually think someone's being hurt, I can't continue. You know, if I'm giving somebody grief, it's because I think they can handle it. I don't do it to people I think are going to break. And I don't understand people who do. And that inability to connect to that is part of the reason I didn't see the problems with the game development sooner. And it's what I was accused of that ultimately broke the working relationship. I said that in the message on Kickstarter. And that wasn't trauma. The other stuff, that was trauma. I got triggered, and I started getting more fight mode because of that. And I don't blame myself for that, because these are people who should have known me well enough to not go where they went. And but the thing about accusing me of being deliberately cruel, that wasn't trauma. That was just heartbreak. And when you learn to live with a condition like PTSD, when you're not regulated, when you're in the throes of it, you can't tell the difference between heartbreak and trauma. It's just all trauma. It's all trauma. It controls you. It's just, it beats you up until you end up in a depression. And the minute you try to come out of the depression, it just beats you up again. And so it's anxiety, depression, anxiety, depression, anxiety, depression. And your nervous system's completely dysregulated. And because your nervous system is, near permanently cacked, you can't feel things like heartbreak because it's all just trauma. And trauma isn't pain. Trauma is a nervous system response. It's a freeze, fight, fawn, or flight, right? And when your brain's being flooded with that stuff, you get an amygdala hijack, and the feelings are just not the same. And so the fact that I was able to feel that was kind of a win in a weird way. Like, as shitty as this whole process has been, it's really tested my recovery. And for the most part, it's held, So that's, I mean, if I can take anything good out of this whole thing, it's that ironically, there were a couple comments from clearly Gamergaters who, I don't know if you guys know, but Gamergate and I did not get off on a great foot, to say the least. Yeah. But there were a couple of them who responded. They clearly backed the crowdfund. Cool. And said, this is all we've been asking for. Just transparency. Another one used the word integrity. And that was really cool. Thinking about how it started, how this is going. The fact that there is that respect there, that's pretty powerful, And there's an example of my missing ability to be mean to the mean people, right? It's the reason I switched from gender critical. I switched from, TERF to gender critical because they don't like being called a TERF. So, okay, I'm going to call people what they're going to be called. Because gender criticals are people too. They do awful, cruel things to trans people. And that's why I oppose them. But I'm not going to respond in kind, And the inability to just label these Gamergaters the worst harassers on the internet and just treat them like subhumans, well, guess that paid off a little, huh? And it's really weird to realize you don't have that. Because there's this, do I speak thoughtlessly? Do I do things that really, really hurt people? Yes. Do I intentionally do hurtful things to hurt people? No. And that was a big part of why I got so badly taken advantage of for so many years. Why I ended up with this stalker. Because she knows I won't stoop to her level. And so she'll never stop. But if I stoop to her level, she wins. You know, if I start becoming a person that takes cracks at her appearance or makes fun of the mental illness I know she has, because this is somebody I knew in real life. You know, if I start using her tactics, I'm no better than her. And I think ultimately that might be what she wants, to prove to herself that I am as bad as she's pretending I am. And the thing is, I'm not. And there are certain things I know I suck at, but I'm pretty good at this. You know, I'm pretty good at seeing people as people and being an asshole sometimes, you know, talking bullshit, but never ever wanting to do harm to anyone, no matter who they are. You know, one of the things I tried very hard to do, and it was very difficult, was show respect and an element of compassion to Anita Sarkeesian and gang when they showed me none. Like, one of the strangest things that whole group ever did was label me a pick-me girl. Me. But I do think that the whole pick-me thing, that label, is a form of bullying, because we don't refer to guys as pick-me guys ever. We actually encourage men to do things to be more attractive to women if they are attracted to women, right? We don't see it as this traitor, being traitors to men. That's the whole pickup artist thing, right? We're like, no, that's bad. That's anti-feminist. And we turn it around on women as if you want to be well regarded by certain people who happen to be men, you're a pick-me. That's bullshit. And I say that as somebody who's not that at all. My agreeableness scores, that's another big part of the problem, right? I don't have it in me to hurt people, but I don't have it in me to just tell people what they want to hear so they'll like me, or so I'll temporarily get out of trouble. And that's why I joke lawful good character, right? And I felt really crappy about those, what I saw as deficiencies. I actually felt like not being able to be cruel to people, not being able to be mean was a deficiency, that there was something wrong with me, because everybody around me seems to be able to do it. And again, do I accidentally hurt people sometimes? Sure, yeah, everybody does. But do I do things deliberately to hurt people? No, I don't understand that. And I felt like there was something wrong with me for years because I couldn't do that. And that's how badly gaslit I was. And part of trauma recovery is to accept those parts of, well, I'll say yourself if you have trauma, like if you're on your journey, accepting the parts of myself I thought were weakness and redefining my relationship with them, because they're part of my inherent personality. I do think that everybody is born kind of with a starter kit, because otherwise I don't know where I came from in my family. No amount of nurture in the world explains me. There's gotta be some core something, because my family did everything possible to train me out of the things, not buying me certain toys. This is why. Toys. But every toy I wasn't allowed to have as a kid. The whole boy stuff, girl stuff. Everybody was very, very concerned about me liking Dungeons and Dragons. You felt them tiptoe around it. And I just liked it. So there is a core persona. There is a core person in there. And our experiences and how we're nurtured shape that throughout our lives. And sometimes shit happens and it separates us from acceptance of that core of us that we can't change. And that's why there are so many people walking around deep in blame and shame, so socially traumatized, sometimes from school. And it is possible to come out of that. And as a couple people say, the brain itches never quite go away, but you learn how to work with them and know them for what they are, instead of instead of them controlling you. Because it's not something you allow. It's, I'm just going to let it all in. I'm going to let myself be horribly traumatized and act like a lunatic because of trauma. No, nobody allows that, right? It's, we don't know how to stop it until we do. So hopefully that's helpful for other people who are struggling with trauma, who are struggling on their own journeys. This is why I got into peer counseling. I kind of fell into it. But, because it was like, well, Twitch streams are becoming group therapy sessions. Let's see if people actually need to talk somewhere that's not public. And a lot of people like their stories being able to help other people's. And I think a big part of the reason I am doing this well is because I work with people 3 to 5 days a week, and I'm constantly reminding myself of the good stuff, right? I'm constantly reminding myself of the steps and the work and reality. And so, it's giving me as much as it's giving me back something different than what I'm working on with clients, because you don't need to lose 10 years of your life the way I did. You can cut it in half. You can even cut it in a third. It is possible, but there's certain things that therapists can't teach you. The system can't give you. Only people who have walk the road to do the Agatha Long thing. What a good show, huh? But only people who have walked the walk really get it, really knows what it feels like. And that's an essential part of the process. It's weird because we do it for addiction recovery, but nothing else. We don't do it for PTSD. We don't do it for BPD. We don't do it for anxiety. We don't do it for depression. We don't have these people who are like, look, I was there. Better is possible. Let's do it together. It's really, really good. And, again, Eileen's aunt's crowdfund to save her house. We got 5 months. Little less now, but I am invested in this. We are doing this one way or the other. So link in the description box below. Thanks everyone. Thanks everyone for listening, and be well.